The biggest mistakes that international students make when applying to colleges and universities in the United States. That's going to be the topic of today's video and some future videos as well, because there are quite a few mistakes that international students make when applying to, or really even setting out to apply to, selective colleges and universities in the United States. I want to start with number one. And this is even something that happens before a student starts typing up his or her college application essays and submits his or her application. This happens well before that. The actual decision of where to apply is often mired in huge mistakes because students internationally have heard of Chicago and New York and Los Angeles and Boston, and as a result, so many international students are applying exclusively to colleges and universities only in these major metropolitan areas that they've heard of, all these many miles away where they live. So as a result, certain colleges get huge influxes of international applications each year. Schools like NYU and Fordham and Columbia, because they're all in New York City. Schools like Boston University and Harvard and MIT and also Babson and Bentley and even Suffolk, huge number of international student applications each year because they're in Boston. And also schools like USC and Loyola Marymount and UCLA because they're in Los Angeles. So you get my point. These are really flashy, shiny objects to international students, these colleges in these major big cities that they've heard of and they're excited to live in for 4 years in the United States. Whereas similarly ranked or even higher ranked universities in cities that they have not heard of are often completely disregarded by international students and international families. Schools like Washington University in St. Louis, one of the top American research universities, it's in St. Louis though, it's not in Chicago. St. Louis is a smaller city. I think it's a much nicer and safer and smaller city, but it's not as happening, it's not as exciting, there's not as much to do as there is in Chicago and New York and Boston. And so as a result, many international families who associate not being in the city with being in the middle of nowhere will completely discount a school like Washington University in St. Louis, even though it gets far fewer international applicants percentage-wise as schools far lower ranked than WashU, and therefore would be maybe more apt to accept a very strong international student. So when you are an international student looking to apply to colleges and universities in the United States, you want to look at schools based off of all the criteria that are important to you. If criteria that are important to you include selectivity, quality of the education, prestige, then you should not be so picky with location because there are amazing American colleges and universities in very well-known locations, and then there are amazing American colleges and universities in locations that you have never heard of. So be open-minded about location. I can name other places as well that just do not get nearly as many international applicants because they're in what are considered second-tier cities or third-tier cities, or maybe not even in cities at all. And as a result, again, a lot of international families are very biased to urban settings because many of the best universities internationally are in big cities, either capitals or major metropolitan areas. They are not likely to be found in the middle of cornfields like a Bucknell would be found, or other amazing colleges in the United States that can even be, again, in the middle of literal cornfields. So as a result, please keep that in mind if you're an international student or family. There are amazing schools in the United States that I would much rather go to, even if they're not in a major urban area, than any university outside of the United States because of the quality, the diversity of programming opportunities, academically, professionally, extracurricularly, relative to other schools that maybe are in bigger cities in international settings like the UK or like mainland Europe or in East Asia, etc. So definitely keep that in mind if you're an international student or a parent of an international student looking to the United States. And I will always say, of course, if you work with me one-on-one, we will craft a personalized list that takes all of your important criteria into account. But if you work with me, you'll always get me to push back on any parent or student who's saying, we got to focus only on New York, Chicago, Boston, and LA. because those are lovely places, but they also have a lot of downsides. Let's face it, there's horrible crime right now in New York City. There's horrible crime in Chicago. Boston is still relatively safe. LA is full of homeless encampments. I mean, there's challenges. Of course, a lot of cities that are smaller have these problems as well, but none of these cities are perfect. And so for you to hinge all of your college admissions hopes on big cities in the United States is a big mistake, whether you're a domestic student or an international student. But of course, the domestic students are far more open-minded often because they know about and have experience engaging in the life of cities other than those cities that I just named. But the international students, maybe because of direct flight connections into Boston, into LA, into New York, into Chicago, but also just because those are the big cities that people have heard of and known of, they're really attracted to those cities. Even schools like Rice, which are in Houston, which is now one of the biggest cities in the United States, get huge drop-offs in numbers percentage-wise in terms of applications relative to similarly ranked schools in a city like Boston or a city like New York, because those are, again, the ones that have more cachet with international families. So if you're an international student or international family, be open-minded about location, because you can get into amazing colleges in the United States, but you may not be in the city that you want to be in. For more videos just like this, you want to subscribe to my channel. I'm going to try to push out some more in the coming days and weeks. I go through fits and starts of this depending on my other workload. But I love doing these videos, and always, of course, if you like these videos, click the like button. I'm going to do a series on what international students are doing wrong when they're applying to colleges and universities in the United States, because I'm so passionate about this, as I've increasingly worked with international students in recent years. In just this past year, nearly half of my students that I've worked with one-on-one have been international. And so I'm getting much more of an understanding on the sort of frame of mind of sort of the quote-unquote average international applicant to the United States. And so I have a whole series of mistakes that we need to go through in order to help students who are international give themselves the very best shot of getting into America's top colleges and universities. Until next time, I'm CollegeMeister, the CollegeMeister. Like this video, like my channel, and subscribe, and I'll be back soon.